Welcome, story lovers, to a tale of fire, ice, and the courage that binds them. Today, we journey to the ancient land of Eldoria, a realm once of breathtaking beauty, now teetering on the brink of annihilation. Imagine a world where shimmering rivers flowed through emerald valleys and mountains kissed the clouds. This peace was shattered by the arrival of two beings of immense power, the twin dragons, Pyron and Frostar. Pyron, the embodiment of fire, was a terrifying spectacle. His scales shimmered like molten gold, and with every breath, he exhaled a torrent of destructive flames that turned lush forests to ash and boiled rivers dry. Villages that had stood for centuries were reduced to smoldering ruins in a matter of moments. His roar was the sound of a volcano erupting, a promise of devastation that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest soldiers. His twin, Frostar, was no less formidable. A creature of pure ice, his scales were the color of a frozen glacier, glittering with a cold, cruel light. Where he flew, a biting blizzard followed, encasing the world in a tomb of ice. His breath could freeze a charging bull in its tracks, and his icy touch brought a swift, silent end. Together, they were a symphony of destruction, a relentless cycle of fire and frost that plunged Eldoria into an age of despair. The people of Eldoria were trapped, caught between scorching infernos and a creeping, deadly winter. Hope was a dying ember. But in the darkest of times, heroes are often forged. From the heart of a small, resilient village emerged a young warrior named Arion. He wasn't born a hero, he was just a man who had lost everything to the dragon's rampage and refused to let fear consume him. He possessed a fierce determination and a spirit that refused to be broken. Arion sought out the wisest elder in Eldoria, a reclusive sage who lived atop the highest peak, the Spire of Whispers. The sage, having foreseen the coming of a champion, had been waiting. He told Arion of an ancient prophecy, a legend that spoke of a weapon forged to command the very elements that threaten their world, the Sword of Balance. This wasn't just a blade of sharpened steel, it was a conduit, an artifact capable of channeling opposing forces and uniting them into a single, harmonious power. The sage guided Arion through a grueling training regimen. It was more than just swordsmanship. He had to learn to withstand the blistering heat of a forge with his bare hands and endure the piercing cold of a mountain blizzard without flinching. He meditated for days, seeking to understand the nature of balance not just between fire and ice, but within himself. He learned that true strength wasn't about favoring one element over another, but about mastering the equilibrium between them. His heart had to be as calm as a frozen lake, yet burn with the passion of a star. After months of relentless preparation, Arion was ready. With the Sword of Balance strapped to his back, its hilt cool against his skin, he began his journey to the Crystal Valley. This was a legendary place, a vast canyon where colossal, naturally formed crystals jutted from the earth, reflecting light in a dazzling, otherworldly display. It was said to be a place of immense elemental energy, the chosen lair of the twin dragons. As Arion stepped into the valley, the air grew thick with tension. The very crystals around him seemed to hum with power. A deafening roar echoed through the canyon, and the sky turned a blazing orange. Pyron descended from the clouds, a living inferno. He unleashed a massive fireball, a miniature sun that hurtled towards Arion. But Arion was prepared. He channeled the icy energy he had mastered into the Sword of Balance. With a swift, fluid motion, he swung the blade, meeting the fireball with a wave of pure cold. The fire and ice collided with a deafening hiss, creating a massive cloud of steam that momentarily shrouded the valley. Through the mist, Arion charged. Pyron, surprised by this mortal's resistance, was momentarily caught off guard. Arion leaped, his blade glowing with an ethereal blue light, and slashed across the dragon's leg. Pyron bellowed in pain and fury, the wound steaming as the magical ice bit into his fiery scales. But there was no time to celebrate. The temperature plummeted. The steam froze into a million tiny ice particles, and the air became sharp enough to cut. Frostar appeared, a silent, gliding shadow of death. He opened his jaws, and a beam of absolute zero shot towards Arion. Thinking fast, Arion reversed his training. He called upon the fire within his own spirit, channeling it into the Sword of Balance. The blade now glowed a brilliant, fiery red. He met the ice beam with a parry of pure heat, shattering the frozen assault into a shower of glittering dust. The battle had been joined. Arion found himself in a deadly dance, dodging Pyron's fiery claws while simultaneously deflecting Frostar's icy tail swipes. He was a blur of motion, his sword shifting from blue to red, from ice to fire, as he fought the twin terrors. He was holding his own, but he was just one man against two demigods of destruction. The dragons, realizing that individually they were being matched, paused. They looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Then, they turned their full, combined fury upon Arion. Pyron unleashed a continuous river of fire, while Frostar simultaneously sent a blizzard of razor-sharp ice shards. The two attacks began to merge, creating a swirling vortex of elemental chaos, a storm of fire and ice that threatened to tear Arion apart. He was trapped, pushed back, the sheer force of the combined assault overwhelming him. His strength was failing. The sword of balance felt heavy in his hand. In that moment of desperation, as his vision blurred and the roar of the storm filled his ears, Arion remembered the sage's final lesson. Balance is not about keeping two forces apart, the old man had said. It is about understanding how they can become one. It wasn't about fighting fire with ice and ice with fire. It was about unity. With a final surge of will, Arion stopped resisting. He stopped trying to counter one element with another. Instead, he opened his mind and spirit, and drew upon both energies at once. He plunged the sword of balance into the ground at his feet and channeled everything he had into it: the heat of the forge, the cold of the blizzard, the fire in his heart, the calm in his soul. The sword began to vibrate violently. The blade, once shifting between red and blue, now began to glow with a blinding, pure white light. It was the color of perfect harmony, the light of creation itself. Arion pulled the sword from the ground, and it felt weightless, an extension of his own being. He held it high, and the white light exploded outwards, forming a dome of serene energy around him. The vortex of fire and ice crashed against the dome, but instead of destroying it, the elemental fury was absorbed, drawn into the blade. The storm dissipated, pulled into the impossible, harmonious energy of the sword. Pyron and Frostar stared in disbelief as their ultimate attack was simply and done. Arion stood in the calm, his sword pulsing with unimaginable power. He looked at the dragons, not with hatred, but with a sense of grim purpose. He was no longer just a warrior, he was an instrument of balance. With a mighty cry that echoed the harmony of the universe, he unleashed the sword's stored energy. A brilliant beam of pure, white light shot from the blade, splitting into as it neared the dragons. One beam struck Pyron, the other struck Frostar, at the exact same instant. There was no explosion, no violent end. There was only a profound silence. The dragons' roars were cut short. Their vibrant, elemental forms began to dull. The molten gold of Pyron's scales cooled and hardened, and the glittering ice of Frostar's body turned opaque and gray. In a matter of seconds, the two terrifying dragons were transformed into magnificent, lifeless statues of stone, forever locked in their final expressions of shock and awe. As the last echoes of the battle faded, a gentle peace settled over the crystal valley. The sun broke through the clouds, and its warm rays reflected off the crystal spires and the two new stone monuments. The land began to heal. The ice melted, feeding the scorched earth, and from the ash, new green shoots began to emerge. Arion, exhausted but victorious, lowered the sword of balance. He had not just defeated two monsters, he had restored the natural order. He became more than a hero, he became a legend. The story of Arion, the warrior who mastered the harmony within to bring peace to the world, was passed down through generations. A timeless reminder that the greatest strength is found not in extremism, but in balance. Thank you so much for joining us on this epic journey today. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales of myth and legend. Let us know in the comments what kind of hero's journey you'd like to see next. Until then, stay curious and stay brave.